welcome to Clay to Canopy, the show where I attempt to make just about everything from the ground up. Today I'm going to be working on the activity chest for the New England Sunporch. Alright, let's go do this. So this activities chest is going to double as an ottoman in this New England Sunporch environment that I am working on. I am the type of person that can never sit still. Maybe you know that about me by now. If I was sitting in a New England Sunporch environment just chilling, I would want to have something to keep my hands occupied. So I envision this activity chest to be just a box that you can keep some kind of ongoing craft, whether it is knitting, needlepoint, whatever kind of things that you might get up to whenever you just want to relax, meditate by knitting or whatever. Knitting, I said knitting twice. Yeah, there's no knitting in this New England Sunporch. There's a lot of yarn though. If you have watched my other video, you know there's yarn involved. Now these strips, I would go around collecting leftover bits of wood and plywood, then I would take them to my bandsaw, rip them up, and create these thin little strips. I have used these thin strips for the shingling and siding on some of my artwork pieces. If you saw the Victorian cat house, the baby's back there sleeping, and I used these strips for that too, for the siding and shingling. But today I'm going to be using them as the decorative element on the sides of the activity box. So I recently as in earlier today, I dyed some fabric so that I would end up with exhausted dye. Right now I'm just going to go to town applying some coats of the exhausted dye back to these wood strips, and I have 4 colors. I'm probably going to need about 2 to 3 coats for each one of these. Once the dye fully dries, then I can begin gluing these up. My pieces have been drying. I did 2 coats on most of them. The green ones I gave 3 coats, and then I kind of mapped out a pattern that I thought was happy. I'm starting with the aesthetic of this piece before I decide anything else. And since I already had these pieces cut, I have 12-inch ones and these are 21 inches. I'm just going to go with these as my base dimensions. I am going to be giving my box a 1-inch border all the way around, and I have some 1/2-inch mahogany plywood here that I'm going to be cutting up. I want to keep this mahogany theme going since I have that in the table. This is only 1/2 inch thick, and I don't want this box to be too hefty. 1/2 inch is going to be just fine, but I am going to cut some additional strips as a border, and I'm winging it with this box just like most of my videos. I have a rough idea of what I want the measurements to be. I'm going to do some edging before I begin gluing in the colored strips. Yesterday I was not being careful and I was being sort of lazy, and I did not block up all of my pieces to make sure I did not get impressions from the clamping. So basically what I have now is these little indentations. Too much pressure on the clamp went down and it crushed the fibers of the wood. So to fix this, I have a very clean damp cloth, and I'm going to lay that over the impression spot. I have my iron at my high cotton setting. I'm basically going to steam out the fibers. I don't want to leave it there too long. I don't want to saturate my wood. So I'm just going to leave it there to steam out, then let it dry and go back and check. And if I need to do more of it, I'm just going to go ahead and keep working over it. This is something you want to do before any kind of finish goes on. I would not recommend attempting to do this to a piece that has some kind of finish on it. While I was waiting for my giant roll of edging to come, the 2-inch thick edging, I was thinking a lot about this box and its future. I really want this to double as a seating element, mainly because this box is going to have a cushioned top from the fabric that I dyed. It's gonna beg to be sat on, and you know, I envisioned it to be kind of like a little ottoman that doubles as a storage chest. My original idea was to biscuit in the bottom, and I do not think that that is going to be a strong enough thing. I just cut up some poplar, and this is going to become the bottom border, and I'm gluing in this poplar into the bottoms, and then I can screw the bottom of the plywood directly to this poplar, and it'll be a nice, strong, structurally sound container if this should ever become a 3rd seat. The next thing I'm going to do is to put in the biscuits that are going to be the thing that holds all of these together, holds the 4 sides together. And then once the biscuits are set up, I'm not gonna glue this together yet. I'm just gonna set the biscuits, and then I'm gonna go ahead and start gluing in my strips. Now the strips, I am going to be using my method of the double glue, where I use the wood glue to do the primary hold, but I use some super glue to temporarily hold it in place as my clamps. Once all of the strips are on and secured, I can go ahead and start the glue up of the 4 sides of the box. I get the bottom on with some screws. I took some rubbing alcohol and cleaned off the box because I'm out of denatured alcohol. And then I went ahead and sprayed it down with some lacquer. So now I'm at the point where I am working on the top. I went ahead and cut up my pieces, and I have this piece of plywood that sits flush all around the top. I only edged one side. I'm going to be gluing that inside here, and this will sit directly inside the box, and that'll keep it from knocking all around. The next thing I'm going to do is attach this to the bottom, and I'm sitting here trying to figure out how do I go about doing this the easiest way possible, because honestly I'm running behind as usual, and I thought I'd give it a try with super glue trick. So I'm going to go ahead and super glue this down just to hold it in place so that I can then flip it over and sink some screws that will be doing the actual holding. Alright, I am pretty close to done here. The last thing I need to do is to go ahead and make the upholstered seat for the top. This is the lid, and on the lid I have left this lip, and then I have cut a smaller piece that is going to sit on the inside, and I'm going to be upholstering this piece right here and then screwing that in from the underside. Before I can do that, I'm going to take that fabric that I dyed in a previous video. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I will attach the link in the description box so you can go check that out. But I dyed a bunch of fabric using some sawdust and some commercial dyes. So I'm going to go ahead and just go to town. Mom, come on. I know. I'm trying to work here. Come on. Okay, there you go. Nothing? You need it in just... You see? You see what's going on? Once I was able to finally stitch up the panel for my outer fabric, it was time to begin upholstery. I cut my upholstery foam to about 1/2 inch larger than my plywood board. I used some spray 77 to hold my foam in place. I like to use some quilter's batting to soften the foam and to give a little bit more of a rounded edge. Using just a staple gun, I applied my quilter's batting to the underside of my plywood and then followed the whole thing up with a piece of muslin. The muslin helps to smooth out any last bits of foam or bulkiness that you might have sticking out around your piece before that final layer goes on. Once that was done, it was time to apply my outer fabric. Corners can be really tricky. It really depends on the aesthetic of the piece and whether or not the cushion is going to be raised or set in. Since this piece has a lip around the top, it really doesn't matter too much as long as my corners look clean. Alright, here it is finished. A bunch of things just happened the other day when I was trying to deal with the top for this. It was one of those things where I was just completely exhausted and was pushing myself more than I should have, and I should have just stepped back and taken a break, but I ended up creating a separate cushion piece that did not work out on the brighter side. I now have a second cushion, and I have been threatening to make a second chair. Instead, as fate would have it, I have the workings for a small bench, since this piece needed to get a completely new top, and I'm really happy with the way it turned out. Saving this piece with the extra stripes and turning this into a bench, I'm going to do that in another video. That's going to give me that extra seating that I was looking for, and also tie in some of the stripes from this into that piece. So it worked out for the better. I'm okay with that. This is not gonna go to waste. I am gonna conclude it here. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, share, and subscribe if you have not done so already. And stick around to see how the bench turns out and the rest of the room. What the hell am I listening to? Sometimes I feel like I live on a construction site. Come on!